Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. You are listening to the Daly Dose Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Clint Daly, coming to you from the Mile High City here in Denver, Colorado. And we are back for another week of talking sports with a dose of common sense. Hey, happy Wednesday to you. Hope your week is off to a strong start. Hope your world is going well right now. Hey, you are already halfway to another weekend, and that is a very good thing. And yes, we probably need to go ahead and discuss the elephant in the room, because I did hear from a few listeners this past weekend. Yeah, heard from a few of you. And I probably need to address it, because more than a few people on social media, just hit me up on my cell phone, may have noticed myself and Mrs. Daly Dose on television this past Saturday at a Colorado State football game. But I want to tell you, it was a little more than that. You know, I told you a few months ago that we had moved up north. We had wanted to get out of the metro area. It was just too crazy. It was just too crowded. And I wanted to get back to small town life. So we moved about 80 miles north of the metro area. We moved to a small town up north. And in our small town, we somehow managed to meet the mayor of the small town and his lovely wife. And what we didn't realize was that there seems to be some sort of, how can I say this, small Northern Plains glitterati, I guess we would say. And I will say this, we were briefly in that glitterati for the weekend. So on Friday night, we went to the big local high school football game we attended with the mayor and his lovely wife. Now, hey, if it's just us, if it's just me, Mrs. Dose, we're sitting up in the nosebleed seats. We're sitting up away from everyone, right? But now that's not the case, because now we are with the Northern Plains glitterati. Oh, we're sitting at the 50-yard line. We are kicking it with my guy Carson. We're getting all the inside scoop. He's letting us know what's what. We saw a really fun high school football game. It was actually the game of the week on local news, and it was a really fun, exciting atmosphere. This place was packed. And I will say this to you, wherever you are listening from right now, if you are not going out and catching some local high school sports, at least here and there, hey, I promise you, you're missing out. We had an absolutely great time that night. And then on Saturday, we had decided to go up to Fort Collins, and we had some tickets to go see the CSU Rams play Texas El Paso. But like I said, we are with the mayor and his lovely wife, so we end up somehow down in the end zone. And yes, you may have seen us celebrating a touchdown with Rams running back Avery Morrow. My phone actually started blowing up from people who were watching us in the stands. No, it was nothing crazy. We were just celebrating with a couple of players. We were celebrating a few of the plays. I mean, come on. It was a game against an unranked team. We didn't embarrass ourselves. We didn't storm the field. Why would we storm the field? We don't live in Boulder. But we did have a great time. I might have to see, in fact, if the mayor can maybe find some time out of his busy schedule to join us sometime on the dose. I think you'd enjoy that. But I will say this. Life with the Northern Plains glitterati, yeah, it's a little bit different. And I'll say this. Life is good. Hey, today on the dose, we do have a little news to touch on, and then we will be talking about some NFL and some college football and a few of the trends that we are noticing so far early on in the season. And yes, we will have a Daly Dose top 5 for you. You know, we have already seen a few quarterbacks go down in the NFL this year. And the backup that steps in sometimes can be ultra important, as you will see in our Daly Dose top 5 today. But let's go ahead and start off in the world of Major League Baseball, where the playoffs are coming quickly and those wild card races are tight. But I said it last week. Los Angeles Dodgers star Shohei Ohtani, dude is having a historic season. And last week, he became the first player in MLB history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases. But it wasn't just that he did it. Oh, it was the way that he did it. On the night that he breaks the record, check out his box score. 6 for 6 at the plate. He hit 3 home runs. He had 2 steals. He had 10 RBIs. Hey, that's just too shy of the MLB single game record, which was set 100 years ago. Now, again, this season that we are seeing from Shohei Ohtani, it should be being pumped up by Major League Baseball everywhere that they can pump it up. However, they're the worst promotional league on the planet, and they're doing absolutely nothing. You know what? They hide their playoff games. They put them on like the Cooking Network at noon on a Tuesday. They hide their opening day. Usually they hold it in the middle of the night in another country, and they completely hide their superstars. I don't get it. I don't understand. Shohei Ohtani is having one of the greatest seasons in the history of the game, and we really aren't hearing that much about it. Major League Baseball, you're just so bad at business. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Let's shift over to the NBA, where Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers have agreed to a 3-year, $192.9 million maximum contract extension that guarantees the former MVP a total of nearly $300 million through the 2029 season. Hey, that is a massive deal. That should keep Embiid a 76er for the remainder of his career. But wow, that is a lot of money. And you know what is crazy is with the number of games that Embiid misses. Yeah, that 3-year deal, it's a tad risky. Hey, big men with back and foot problems, they don't usually age that well. It's not like he's going to get better with age, but hey, maybe Embiid will be the exception to the rule. Like many stars in today's NBA, though, he doesn't always seem to like to play that much. Especially when he has to play against, a big white guy that lives in Denver. I'll just say this, we do see Joel Embiid come down with the Jokic flu quite a bit. Finally, the WNBA is having a monster season compared to past years. They are actually having people show up at their games. What? They are actually having fanfare. And you have to think that a good portion of it is because of rookie sensation Caitlin Clark, who has been an absolute lightning bolt of excitement for this league. Well, hey, the first round of the WNBA playoffs began this week, and I do have a history in women's sports. So right now, let's break down those WNBA playoffs. Let's go ahead and... What's that? We're out of time? Really? We're out of time. Get to football? Okay, well, we're out of time for the WNBA playoffs. I would like to really dive in and really break down what's what in the matchups and the best teams and the best... Okay, never mind. You know what? Let's go ahead and get over to some football instead. So the college football and NFL seasons are rolling along, and we are almost a month in. And while we still have a long way to go to figure out exactly what is what, I'm starting to notice some trends. Now, maybe that's all these are. Maybe they are just trends. Maybe they will change, or maybe they're going to let us know a little bit about how this season is going to go. So right now, let's dive quickly into a few trends that I have noticed so far in college football and eventually in the NFL. And one of the trends that I'm seeing in college football is teams that went into the season with their coaches on a hot seat to start with. Yeah, those seats are fully on fire now. So Florida got a win over Mississippi State on Saturday. But head coach Billy Napier, yeah, he is in huge trouble. The Gators have been absolutely awful. I honestly think that Florida just doesn't have anyone to fill the job with, or he'd be gone already. It's not just him. Sam Pittman, Arkansas. They managed to beat Auburn on Saturday, but Auburn's not very good. Hey, that team is struggling. They don't play any defense. I thought Sam Pittman was going to come in and make them a defensive, tough team. That's not who they are. Baylor's Dave Aranda had to get creative to find a way to lose his game on Saturday night. Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati already has a bad loss. And now, a guy we didn't expect to be on a hot seat, Florida State's Mike Norvell, he's trying to light his seat on fire too. Hey, get ready for some head coaches to get fired because it is coming. And the problem, as usual, is there will not be enough quality candidates to take over for all these guys when it does happen. You're going to hope, hey, we're going to go get the biggest name guy. We're going to go get the guy at the biggest name school. No, you're not. You're going to have to settle for a sorry assistant. That's just how this has to happen. At some point, math does play a role. Okay, this next one is obvious. I know. But the Big Ten and the SEC, yeah, they're totally dominant so far. Consider this. Of the top 25 teams in the country right now, 12 of them are from those two conferences only. Half! Yes, that is half. In fact, of the top 10 teams in the country, 8 of them are from the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, I understand that conference play is beginning. These teams will start beating each other up. But the SEC and the Big Ten, they are just so talented at the top. The first 12-team playoff, it just might be packed with teams from those two leagues and not much else. I mean, you're going to get another conference winner or two. And then what? Everything else is going to be SEC and Big Ten? Yeah. Right now, that's how it's trending. Which brings us to our final trend that we are noticing in college football, and that is the fact that when the 12-team playoff was announced, we all kind of thought the same thing, right? Hey, now the little guy will actually get a chance to compete. Now, the group of 5 teams could actually make it into the playoff. Won't this be fun? Yeah, except that those group of 5 teams right now, they've been largely awful already this year. Going into the season, we thought, well, maybe South Florida could compete. Maybe they could be a group of 5 team. Nope. Liberty is undefeated, but they had close calls to some really bad teams already. Boise State has a loss. So does Appalachian State, Memphis, Tulane, Texas, San Antonio. They all have losses. Do any group of 5 teams even want to get into the playoff? Because right now, it is looking like all 12 spots are going to be going to the big boys from major conferences. And honestly, right now, it really doesn't even look all that close. Okay, but let's switch over to the NFL, where we are now 3 weeks into the season. And while we still do not know really enough to make, true declarations just yet, we are starting to see a few trends here as well. And the biggest trend that I see is, once again, parity is king.
Scott the Beta King.
On Sunday, we saw 6 winless teams get their very first victory of the season, and 4 undefeated teams take their first loss. Now, I know we say it all the time. I understand that. We say it all the time, but on any given Sunday, any team can beat another. But, come on. We know the big dogs are the big dogs. Yeah, except for that on any given Sunday in the NFL, any team can beat any other team. That is just how it is. Hey, you show up flat, you can get sent home with a loss. Every team has talent because the margin for error in the NFL, it is just so small. Which is why every single year we have surprise teams that are better than we expected, and we have teams disappoint us that slide down in the standings. Hey, we are only 3 weeks into the season, and we have just 4 undefeated teams remaining, and we have just 1 team without a win completely. And yet, that is what we love about the NFL, isn't it? We love the fact that in any given season, your team just might end up being good. As usual, parity is king in the NFL. And as usual, it is good to be the king.
It's good to be the king.
You know, another trend that I'm noticing in the NFL is that scoring is down. NFL teams are currently averaging 21 points a game. That is the 5th straight year that scoring has decreased. And it is the fewest points per game since back in 2006. You know, since 2020, scoring in the NFL has steadily declined, and average passing yards per game has also been on the decline. Why? Well, there's a few reasons. It's not just one simple reason. One, every year, NFL defenses, they work all offseason on how to slow down NFL offenses. And you know, it does work for a while. It works for the first month or two. And I also believe that it takes NFL offensive lines a fair amount of time to come together and be effective. And it is rare that you just bring back an entire offensive line unit as one. Doesn't happen very often. You're usually plugging a few different pieces in. Well, as a result, right now we're seeing quarterbacks constantly under pressure. They're being hit, they're being sacked, they're making poor throws. I would imagine that scoring will begin to rise in the next few weeks. We'll start to see it ascend a little bit, but it's going to be worth watching because right now, quarterbacks are not playing very well, and I think a lot of it is due to the fact that they're under constant duress. Lastly, one trend that we are spotting, at least so far in the NFL, is that head coaches are actually being a little more conservative this year. You know, going for it on 4th down, kicking onside. Coaches are actually being a little more hesitant to do that. They're letting the game play out without taking unnecessary risks. But I mean, when you stop and you think about it, guys like Cliff Kingsbury, Brandon Staley, Bruce Arians, Matt Nagy, those guys all did a fair amount of gambling, and those guys are no longer in the league. At the end of the day, NFL coaches want to keep their jobs, and taking those risks when you don't have to, it can backfire. So this year, we've already seen guys like Antonio Pierce and Matt LaFleur and even Sean Payton, Dan Campbell. They'll take some risks, but they've scaled them back just a little bit, and I don't think that's a surprise because I think they're starting to look at it and say, okay, stats are what they are. I understand that, but I don't have to risk everything just yet. And I'm especially seeing that from Dan Campbell in Detroit. Hey, you know he's going to take chances, but he's not doing anything stupid. Not quite yet. I'll wait until later in the season before I truly declare that coaches are conservative. But right now, they're being at least a little bit conservative. Now, as we do so many weeks here at the Daly Dose, we need to get over to our Daly Dose Top 5. You know, this year in the NFL, we have already seen some clutch performances coming from a very unlikely source. Of course, every team wants to have that household name franchise quarterback. Okay, but what about when that guy goes down? Hey, it happens every single year. And this year is no exception. The Minnesota Vikings were going to start rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy. He went down with a knee injury, and now Sam Darnold has the Vikings sitting at 3-0. Who saw that coming? The Carolina Panthers look like the worst team in recent history with Bryce Young under center. In comes Andy Dalton, and the Panthers handed the Las Vegas Raiders a loss on Sunday. They got their first win. Green Bay is somehow surviving with Malik Willis in the lineup while Jordan Love is out, and the Miami Dolphins wish they had a decent backup with Tua Tagovailoa out. Hey, a backup quarterback can change everything. Some of them step in and they actually make their team better. Others come in and they show us all exactly why they aren't actually starters. Today, our Daly Dose Top 5 is counting down the top 5 backup NFL quarterbacks of all time. Now, understand this. I'm not talking about guys like Steve Young, Drew Brees, Kurt Warner, Tom Brady. Yes, they were backups for a short amount of time, but they were primarily starters. I am talking about guys that were primarily backups, and they were very, very good in that role. We start off at number 5. And we landed a quarterback that was a starter, but only for like 3 seasons. And if I'm being honest, he wasn't very good in that role. Drafted out of Grambling by Tampa Bay in the first round of the 78 NFL draft, Doug Williams was in a tough spot. It was a young team they were trying to build. He actually had one good season as the starter, but then that cheapskate owner let him walk away in free agency, and Doug Williams went to Washington. However, head coach Joe Gibbs named him the backup to starter Jay Schroeder. Well, in '87, Williams stepped in for Schroeder and led them to a victory in Super Bowl 22, becoming the first black quarterback to both play in and win a Super Bowl. In that game, Doug Williams engineered a 42-10 rout over my Denver Broncos, and I'm still a little bit upset by it. Williams completed 18 of 29 passes. He had 340 yards and 4 touchdowns, all of which were in one quarter. Yeah, needless to say, it set a number of records. It was a 35-point second quarter, put the game out of the reach, and Doug Williams was named Super Bowl MVP. Hey, he wasn't a great starter, but Doug Williams was a pretty good backup, and he comes in today at number 5. We move next to number 4, and we get to a guy that was rarely ever the everyday starter, but he was very good in his backup role. In 12 seasons, Frank Reich started just 20 total games. But with the Buffalo Bills, he was Jim Kelly's backup for 8 of those seasons. Oh, and by the way, he's responsible for one of the NFL's greatest comebacks ever. In '92, Jim Kelly went down in the season with a knee injury, and in the wild card game, the Bills found themselves trailing Houston 35-3. Frank Reich led the biggest comeback in NFL history, a record that lasted for 30 years. The Bills came back and beat Houston 41-38. Now, Frank Reich struggled away from Buffalo, but because of those years he played as Kelly's backup, he actually finished his career with a positive touchdown to interception ratio and a pretty impressive record. Frank Reich comes in today on our list at number 4. We arrive at number 3, and we don't have to go back very far for this one. In 11 seasons, this quarterback only started a total of 58 games. But as a backup, he had one of the most memorable runs in NFL history. Drafted out of Arizona by the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Foles would step in for Michael Vick in 2013. And Foles actually tied the NFL record with 7 touchdowns in a game. Yeah, that's insane. He was traded to the Rams. Then after backing up Alex Smith for the Chiefs, Foles came back to Philadelphia, and when starter Carson Wentz went down with a knee injury, Foles saved the Eagles' season. He beat the Vikings in the playoffs, he shocked the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and of course, he was involved in that famous Philly special sequence. Foles then replaced Wentz in 2018, and he took the Eagles back to the playoffs. Hey, Nick Foles was a very average NFL starter, but he was pretty dangerous as a backup. Nick Foles lands on our list today at number 3. So we arrive at the number 2 backup quarterback of all time in the NFL, and we get to another guy that was never very good as a starter. But he was excellent as a backup because Jim Plunkett's career was an incredibly mixed bag. On one side, Jim Plunkett had just 3 winning seasons during his entire career. He never made a Pro Bowl. He never made an All-Pro team. His stats are nothing great. And on the other side, Jim Plunkett won 2 Super Bowls. Oh, and by the way, was also named a Super Bowl most valuable player. Now, injuries did derail his career, and they relegated him to that role of a backup. But understand, during that stretch, Jim Plunkett was just a .500 quarterback as a starter. But as a backup of the Raiders, he won double the number of games that he lost. Hey, for whatever reason, the guy wasn't a starter. Jim Plunkett was a great backup, though. And for that, he lands today at number 2. However, if we are naming the most successful NFL backup quarterback of all time, then Earl Morrall is the answer. And it's not really that close. Morrall only entered a season as a starter twice. But he was a backup in the NFL for nearly 20 years. He actually won the league MVP filling in for Johnny Unitas back in '68. And he started most of the season for those undefeated 72 Dolphins, and he kept them undefeated. But he had to fill in for Bob Greasy, who was injured. Now, if you take away Earl Morrall's time when he was in Baltimore and Miami, Morrall as a starter was 30-32-1. But in 9 seasons as a backup with the Colts and the Dolphins, Earl Morrall went 33-4-1. Yeah, that's a pretty good record as a backup. Earl Morrall is our Daily Dose #1 greatest backup quarterback of all time. Hey, we saw this past week. 3 backup quarterbacks got crucial wins for their teams. Hey, holding that clipboard, it is one of the cushiest jobs in the NFL. Until the starter goes down or struggles, and then we find out if you actually have the right stuff or not. Hey, next week on the Daily Dose, we will, of course, be keeping you up on all that is going on in the world of sports. And you know, with all the conference realignment we have going on in college football, even in college basketball, I might have to take a look at an idea I was kicking around. You're going to have to check back with the Daily Dose and see what I've got, but I've got something a little bit different for you. So be sure you tune into the Daily Dose next week, and be sure you let a friend know to do the same. Hey, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for listening to the Daily Dose every week, especially, yes, our new friends from the Northern Plains, Glitterati. But thank you for the emails, thank you for the text, thank you for the tweets, thank you for stopping by DailyDoseSports.com, where we do put up articles every week, and we do have links to the video and links to the podcast. And of course, if you need to email the Daily Dose, feel free to drop us a line, DailyDoseSports@gmail.com. We would love to hear what you have to say. But more than anything, thank you for sharing the show, for sharing the videos, for sharing the articles with someone that you know. We absolutely love it when you do that. Just say thank you to JSP. Could not do any of this without you. I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody.
Scott the Beta King.